Hi, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel. Today we will be going over the materials you'll need to get started with your own oil painting practice. So let's get started. Okay, now I know we normally start right into this video, but I wanted to let everybody know that I already have an oil painting safety video out that covers in more detail some of the things I'm about to suggest. So I highly recommend watching that video after this one, as it's going to go into detail about why I'm making the choices I'm making and how these things work that I'm not going to be covering in this video. So I wanted to give everybody a heads up in case it feels like I'm going a little fast to watch that video after this one. Okay, with that, now we can get started. First, and probably the most important thing you'll need, is a set of oil paints. Now, oil paints, like any paints, are made out of a pigment and a binder, and the binder for oil paints is linseed oil. When starting any painting practice, whether it's acrylic or oil paints, I always suggest that the beginning artists buy a small selection of colors. For the beginning oil painter, I suggest buying a set of warm and cool primaries plus black and white. The colors that I suggest are going to be listed on the screen next to me, and they will also be listed in the description below. With these colors, you'll be able to create any color on the color wheel and beyond, and that is why I suggest using them, as it'll also give you a chance to practice mixing. Once you get the hang of all of that, then I find it's the best time to start experimenting with other paint tubes like burnt sienna and raw umber. However, they are definitely not necessary when getting started, and I find that I actually mostly reach for these in my own practice. When buying your first set of paint tubes, I always suggest looking to see if the name has the word hue attached to it or if it has the AP logo. This indicates that it is less toxic for us to use, and for more information about why the word hue is important, go ahead and check out my safety video. Next, let's talk about brushes. Oil painting brushes come in rigid or soft, synthetic or natural bristles, and can come in a wide variety of price ranges. I have always been a strong believer that you do not need to buy the most expensive paintbrush on the market, because what's really important is the shape of the paintbrush. For beginning oil painters, I suggest that you buy a round, a flat, a filbert, and a bright paintbrush. I also suggest buying these brushes in a variety of sizes, and if you're just starting out, 2 sizes will work just fine as long as it's a larger brush and a smaller brush. And I consider these the fundamentals to any painting kit, because this will give you a variety of textures and a variety of control. To clean oil painting brushes, we use a substance called solvent. Now, traditionally, artists will use a solvent called turpentine. However, I do not use that in my own practice. I use one called Gamsol. Gamsol is much more refined and therefore is much less strong in smell, which is perfect when I work in the studio instead of having to work outside. And regardless of which type of solvent you decide to use, you'll also want to store it in a safe container, whether it's glass or metal. And to know which one will work best for you, I suggest going ahead and checking out my safety video, because it goes over that much more thoroughly. Next, we're going to be talking about palettes. For oil painting, I suggest using a glass palette because they are the easiest to mix on and the easiest to clean. Plus, you can make one even out of a picture frame. Alternatively, you could also use palette paper or a wooden palette. I will say, if you're going to use a wooden palette, you will find it's a bit more challenging to clean and it can be a bit more challenging to work on, but it will work just fine. And speaking of mixing, you're also going to want a pretty flexible palette knife. And if you do decide to work on glass, you're also going to want a straight razor for cleaning. Continuing on with cleanup, when you want to wipe your brushes off, I suggest having a set of rags. However, you can also use paper towels. But whatever you decide, always make sure to store them in a fire bucket that's either purchased or homemade, or leaving them outside when you're not using them for safety reasons. And speaking of safety, you're also going to want to purchase a set of personal protective equipment, PPE, for oil painting, which is either gloves or a barrier cream. In my own personal practice, I use both depending on what point of the painting I'm in, but this is going to be on your own personal preference, so I suggest playing around with both. Regardless, you just want something to protect your hands from the oil paints and solvent. Last few things that you're going to want to purchase is an easel and something to paint on. For easels, I suggest either a tabletop or a standing easel, and I suggest these because it's really challenging to paint flat with oil paints because they're quite messy. So this is why I suggest painting on an easel. And as for surfaces, I suggest purchasing a canvas panel if you are a beginner because they are much more forgiving and easy to store. Just don't move them when they're wet. Or if you already have stretched canvas, that will work totally fine. I use both in my own practice, so again, it'll also come down to your own personal preference. So those are the materials I suggest when getting started with your own oil painting practice. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Or if you'd like to see more art education videos or stuff from my own practice, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thank you again, happy painting, and I look forward to seeing you next time.